بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to resume our study of Introduction to Usul al-Fiqh based on Ayatollah Mutahhari's book. The topic for today, which is lesson 4 of his book, is about the issues and problems which are discussed in the science of Usul al-Fiqh. And inshallah, if we have time, maybe we start also with the beginning of lesson 5. But let's first see how much we can discuss lesson 4. We have already talked about the definition of Usul al-Fiqh, its relation with fiqh, its subject matter. We have talked about its history and development. Now we want to see what are some of the main discussions in the science of Usul al-Fiqh. Very, very brief. Very, very brief. Before we go into actual discussions in the science of Usul al-Fiqh, we need to come up with a framework, with a kind of organization. As you remember, when we discussed about fiqh, we mentioned how our jurists have divided different sections of fiqh, and we mentioned more than one way of classifying discussions in fiqh. So here also, when it comes to Usul al-Fiqh, our ulama have different styles in organizing their discussions in Usul al-Fiqh. And Ayatollah Mutahhari has his own way of classifying this. So what he does is this. He says, what we want to learn in Usul al-Fiqh is Islamic practical laws, the rulings of Sharia that would apply to us. Now, these rulings are sometimes the rulings that are backed up by some references from the Quran or Sunnah or Ijma' or Aql. You remember we said there are 4 sources that we rely on for fiqh: al-Kitab, al-Sunnah, al-Ijma', al-Aql. The book, Sunnah, consensus, and intellect. So, how should I make my wuzu? How should I make my salat? How should I go for hajj? How should I, pay my khums? How should, we engage, for example, in transactions, etc.? Sometimes we refer to the Quran or Hadith or Ijma' or Aql and find out what is our ruling. But there are times that we don't find any specific mention of this issue in Quran or Sunnah or Ijma' or Aql. Here, Islamic Sharia has a practical measure, has a way to solve these problems for our practice. Here, we have 4 general principles that we can apply. We call them al-Usul al-Amaliyya, practical principles. This is when faqih, mujtahid, cannot find anything adequate as a basis for his fatwa. There is nothing in the Quran that would be solving the problem. Or in the hadith or in ijma or aql. Either there is no mention, or if there is a mention, for example, in the case of hadith, maybe that hadith cannot be verified. But because we have to act, so we have a set of secondary principles that would not tell us what is the ruling in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just tells us what should we do now. So, those issues in Usul al-Fiqh that relate to al-Adillatul Arba'a, to those four sources, al-Kitab, wal-Sunnah, wal-Ijma, wal-Aql, form part of Usul al-Fiqh, which is the major part of Usul al-Fiqh. And those practical principles, al-Usul al-Amaliyah, form another part of Usul al-Fiqh. So we can divide all the discussions in Usul al-Fiqh into two parts, two compartments. One, how to understand the rulings of any issue based on the Quran or Sunnah or Ijma and Aql. The second is how to understand my task, my duty, when I cannot understand the first. Here our ulama have a terminology that can help, but you have to be careful because this terminology is used in another way as well. Sometimes they use al-hukm al-waqi'i in contrast to al-hukm al-zahiri to refer to this dichotomy, to this distinction. Sometimes it has another meaning, but in the way that Ayatollah Mutahhari has mentioned here and many times in Usul ulama discuss is this. There is a ruling that is in the knowledge of Allah, the ruling of Islam about this case. We call it al-hukm al-waqi'i. Al-hukm al-waqi'i means the real, the true ruling. Anything is either wajib or makruh or mustahab or mubah or haram if it is an action. Because ahkam taklifiyya are one of these five. Either is wajib or makruh or mustahab or mubah or haram. Sometimes we can find out what is in the reality, the ruling. Of course, as we said last time, we don't necessarily become 100% sure. We cannot say, Wallahi, this is definitely the ruling of Islam about this issue. We can just say we have hujjah. We have a proof that this is the ruling. Unless something is self-evident, something is very obvious, is min daruriyat ad-din, is one of the most obvious things from Islam, that then there is no doubt. Most of the time, we cannot swear by Allah that this is the ruling. Neither mujtahid can swear by Allah, nor muqalladeen and followers of mujtahid. But we can say we have hujjah, and that's enough for us. But sometimes it's not a matter of what is the ruling in reality. It's a matter of what should I do now. For example, sometimes we come across something which was not there before. For example, cloning, human cloning. It was not there before. So we don't find any direct reference to human cloning in our four sources, direct. We don't find any hadith, any verses of the Quran, any ijma about this. So we cannot say it's definitely halal or haram. Maybe there are some general rulings that you can apply. Suppose in this case, even we don't have general ruling. Suppose there is nothing that I can say, for example, this is haram because it is very harmful. If we don't have any general ruling, and if we don't have any specific ruling, what should we do? We go to Usul Amaliyah. We say, okay, كل شيء لك حلال حتى تعرف أنه حرام. Everything is permissible unless it is proved otherwise. Or there is a chemical, we don't know it is najis or not. We don't have any specific or general rule that would apply to this case and says it is najis. So we say كل شيء لك طاهر حتى تعلم أنه نجس. So either we apply some practical qaida, like qaida to tahara, which we discuss in the jurisprudential maxims, or sometimes we don't have even jurisprudential maxim. We go to usul amaliyah and we say when there is no evidence, we assume there is no obligation. There is no task towards this. So one part of Usul al-Fiqh is about how to analyze, how to interpret the four sources and understand al-ahkam al-istinbatiyah, those rulings which are a matter of inferring from the text are primary ruling. And some part of Usul al-Fiqh is about what should we do in the absence of adequate reference, and that is a matter of four principles of practice, four practical principles, usul amaliyah. Inshallah, we will talk about them later, but just because I want you to have some idea and to remind yourself, I'm sure you are already familiar with some of it at least. One is istishab. Istishab is when the previous condition was known and we have doubt whether it has changed or not. If you were certain that something was tahir, either as a particular instance or as a ruling, this was tahir, this was ritually clean, we don't know if it has changed, either because of new legislation, or it can be a case that I don't know, this water has been touched by najis or not. It can be shubhiyya hukmiyya, it can be shubhiyya mistaqiyya. In any case, the previous condition was known. I don't know whether it has changed or not. I should assume that still it's as it used to be. This is istishab. Sometimes there is no previous condition which is known. Then if we know that there was an obligation, or if we don't know, it makes big difference. If we don't know there was an obligation, it is the place for bara'ah, asalatul bara'ah. We assume there is no taklif unless proved otherwise. If there was a taklif and we don't know which of the two, if ihtiyat is possible, we should do ihtiyat. Otherwise, we have takhir, which is choice. So istishab, bara'ah, ihtiyat, and takhir are four principles that we call them usul amaliyah. They don't tell us what is the ruling of Allah in reality, but they tell us what Allah wants from you to do when you don't know the rule of Allah, which is in reality. Okay, so two compartments of Usul al-Fiqh. One about four sources, how to understand ahkam istinbati. One about when there is no such source and we have to do some practical measure to solve our problem, and that is to go to Usul Amaliya. Now, with respect to the first, which is the most important, or I can say the major part of Usul, and I can say also the most important part of Usul, is about the first, when we refer to the Quran and Sunnah and we have something specific or general that can help to find hukm istinbati. The issues are what follows. One, which is an issue related to the Quran. And Ayatollah Mutahhari has very beautiful point here, which is very well known to people who studied Usul al-Fiqh, that most of the issues about the Quran are common to Sunnah as well. In Usul al-Fiqh, I repeat, in Usul al-Fiqh, most of the issues that pertain to the Quran pertain to the Sunnah as well. We have many discussions, inshallah we will talk about it, about awamir, nawahi, am and khas, mutlaqan muqayyad, ijma, all these kind of things. They come later, because ijma also can be related to both. But at least am and khas, mutlaqan muqayyad, all relate to both of them. There is, Ayatollah Mutahhari says, there is only one issue that pertain only to the Quran. It's not common between Quran and Sunnah. Please pay attention. We are not saying the Quran and Sunnah are the same. Please don't get me or Sheikh Mutahhari wrong. No, it's not they are the same. We are saying the rules in Usul al-Fiqh that pertain to the Quran pertain to the Sunnah as well. The discussions that in Usul al-Fiqh pertain to the Quran pertain to Sunnah as well. We are not saying they are the same. We are saying the rules are the same, except one rule that we find in the Quran and we don't find in Sunnah. Yes, there are things about Sunnah that don't pertain to Quran. That's another issue. But anything about the Quran would be useful also to discuss about Sunnah, except one, which is exclusive to the Quran. And that is something that might be surprising to you. Ayatollah Mutahhari very well says that you may actually wonder, why they need to discuss this. And that is about Hujjat Zawahir al-Kitab. I mentioned the Arabic term because some of you know Arabic and some of you maybe later want to follow up this discussion in our classic textbooks. So I mentioned the Arabic, but I explain everything in English. So those who don't understand Arabic, please don't worry. So Hujjat Zawahir al-Kitab means validity or authority of the apparent meanings of the book. Everything that we can understand from a text is either nas or zahir. Inshallah later when we will talk about mujmal and mubayyan, we will mention this again. But for the time being, anything that can be clearly understood from a text, you can have a reliable understanding of a text, is either nas or zahir. Nas means something which is said explicitly. There is no other way to understand it. It's so obvious that can have only one interpretation. This is nas. Nas here means explicit. If, for example, I say that I owe this person 100 British pounds, which are, for example, because of me buying from him something which valued 100 pounds and I couldn't pay him 100 pounds, this is very clear that I really owe him this much money. No one can say, no, he meant that he is in he has done some favor and he wanted to, for example, say that I owe him a lot, he has helped me. No, he's clearly saying £100 and says that was the price of a purchase. So it's very clear, no one can interpret it different way. But if I say, for example, this person is my brother, it can mean that he's my blood brother. It can mean he's my brother in faith. Here there are two interpretations. Maybe you can say, we assume that when someone says this person is my brother, means blood brother, unless there is evidence that he means brother in faith. Okay, no problem, but at least there are two possibilities. One of them is stronger. One of them is followed up unless there is overriding evidence. This is not Nas, because Nas has only one interpretation. Zahir can have two interpretations, or more than one, anyway, 2, 3, but one is the one that comes to mind when we hear it. It is the main meaning, and others need evidence. This is called Zahir. Now, the question is, when it comes to fiqh, when it comes to ayatul ahkam, you remember we said there are about 500 verses of the Quran that pertain to sharia, to fiqh. Is zahirul Quran hujjah, or it has to be nas? If something is mentioned explicitly, of course it's hujjah. But if it is zahir, is it hujjah? They don't discuss about hadith, because in the hadith is hujjah, but specifically about Quran. You may wonder, Ayatollah Mutahhari says, why people make such distinction? With respect to the Quran, must be definitely hujjah. He says the reason for raising this issue is because our ulama, who are usuli, which is mainstream, our line of scholarship, the mainstream is usuli, opposite to akhbari that we talked about them before. Usuliyun, our ulama who are usuli, wanted to address a problem raised by akhbaris and wanted to clarify, because akhbaris say Zahirul Kitab is not hujjah. Not because they don't accept Quran, na'uzu billah. No, they accept Quran, they love Quran, but they say Quran is only understood by Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. They refer to some hadith which says, whoever interprets the Quran by his or her own opinion would be not accepted. There are punishments for people who interpret the Quran by their own opinion. For example, man fassara al-Quran bi-ra'yih falyatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar. So they say, look, we should not interpret the Quran by our own opinion. We have to spend time looking for hadith from Ahlul Bayt. And if there is no hadith, we suspend judgment. We don't say anything. We say this ayah we don't understand. So, because akhbariyun had this idea that zawahirul kitab are not hujjah, meaning that we cannot understand them by ourselves and we have to refer it to Ahlul Bayt and only accept their interpretation, which means that then it becomes only sunnah. Ulama'un al-usuliyun are usuli current of scholars, which is the mainstream. They mention this issue to clarify this misunderstanding. And we have lots of discussions here. For example, Sheikh Ansari rahmatullah alayh, in his book Fara'idul Usul, has lots of beautiful points about this. Basically, our ulama say this is not acceptable. we are also Shia, we are also followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and whatever they say as interpretations, we accept, definitely. But it doesn't mean that we cannot understand the Quran if there is no hadith. Actually, Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have always referred their followers to the Quran. Even they have said, if you receive a hadith from us, check it against the Quran. If it conflicts with the Quran, throw it at the wall. فَاضْرِبُوهُ عَلَى الْجَدَارِ. Because they were aware that they were fabricated hadith. Therefore, they asked people to check their hadith against the Quran. If it is in compliance with the Quran, okay. If it's not, throw it away. This means that hadith itself must be checked against the Quran. This means that Quran is understandable. We can rely on our understanding of the Quran. And tafsir bil-ray, which is condemned, is not what a scholar with proper methodology try to understand the Quran with. Tafsir bil-ray means to impose your personal opinions which are not backed up with proof, with evidence, with proper methodology. It's just your personal opinion, guessing, preference. You impose it on the Quran. Something you have got it from another source, or it's your personal, wishes or desires or preference, and you say this is what Quran says. This is condemned. Not a mujtahid who is equipped with Usul al-Fiqh and other required sciences with sincerity, with piety, refers to the Quran to understand the ruling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not tafsir bil-ray. Then we go to Sunnah. With respect to Sunnah, there is no issue about Zahir al-Sunnah is Hujjah or not. Zahir al-Sunnah is Hujjah. Nas is Hujjah. Zahir is Hujjah. But there are two issues. There are many issues, but two are mentioned by Ayatollah Mutahhari. One is how we can reach Sunnah. Sunnah is saying of Ma'soom, practices of Ma'soom, and taqreer, tacit approval or implicit approval of Ma'soom. If it is reached through tawatur, there is a hadith that we have no doubt about it because it has been so many times by so many people narrated that we are 100% sure. Or if it is not mutawatir, at least is mahfufa bil qara'in, it is surrounded with lots of evidence that would make it again 100% clear that this is from Imam. No problem. The question is about khabar wahid. Khabarul wahid means when one person or more than one, but not enough to make it mutawatir, have narrated Sunnah. Can we accept it or not? This is a discussion about Sunnah. Khabarul wahid hujjatun am la? Is Khabarul wahid hujjah or not? Ulama'una, our scholars who are usuli, they say yes, it is hujjah. Even akhbariyun, of course, they say it's hujjah because they believe that when a person is reliable, either because he is adil, which is excellent. Adil means a person who doesn't commit any sin. Adil is a person who is muttaqi. It's not ma'soom, but it's adil. Alhamdulillah, we have many people who are adil, means they don't commit sins, but It's not ma'asum. They may commit sins, they may forget, they may make mistakes, but they never do intentionally any sin. It's adil. If the narrator is known to be adil, then why we should not take his narration? Or if it's not known to be adil, at least is known to be truthful. Because maybe there is a person who has some issues, he's not 100% practicing, but never tells lies, never attributes anything false to Ahlul Bayt. There can be people that maybe when it comes to some issues, they are not that much determined, but they never tell lies. So this is also something that can be used as a way to understand validity of the hadith. Either someone who is known to be adil imami, or at least someone who is sadiq, who is honest, truthful, we can trust. So khabarul wahid is accepted by people in their day-to-day life if a reliable person tells them something. They would accept it. We also accept it in religious life, especially we have some evidence from the Quran and Hadith. For example, Ayatollah Mutahhari refers to Ayatun Naba, the verse in Surah Tawbah, which, Ayatun Nafr, which is one source, which we mentioned before, I mentioned it now again, and Ayatun Naba, which is another verse that I mentioned in Surah Hujurat. In Surah At-Tawbah, we have Ayatun Nafr that we mentioned before. لولا نفر من كل فرقة منهم طائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين ولينذروا قومهم إذا رجعوا إليهم لعلهم يحذرون. Allah says, why from every group, every community, some people don't go to learn their faith deeply, and then they go back to their own people and warn them, educate them, teach them. So ulama say, if these people are going to go back to their cities and no one accepts from them what they quote, then what's the point? This is one point, argument. Another argument that Ayatollah Mutahhari mentions, that you find it in all Usuli books about Hujjat Academy again, is Ayatun Naba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Hujurat, number 6, verse 6 of Surah Al-Hujurat, إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. If a fasiq, if a sinful person brings you a piece of news, Quran says فَتَبَيَّنُوا, you must investigate. Don't act upon what a person who is fasiq informs you, so that you would not then get into wrong things, ignorant, unwise, irrational things that you will become remorseful. And this refers to a story in the early Islam, that some people were going to cause big fitna, a fight, a war, because they went to collect zakat, and they misunderstood, and maybe also there was a personal issue with the commander and those people. So they were reporting back to Muslims that these people are not cooperating and they want to rebel, etc., which is going to cause a big problem. Allah says, إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة. Because of this, you may fight another group. You have to be very careful. So from this ayah, by the way of implication, we say mafhum. There's an implicit meaning here, that if the one who has brought you the news is not fasiq, you don't need to inquire. It says in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in, not in ja'akum adilun binaba'in. So Khabarul Wahid is Hujjah, and we have many hadiths about this, so we don't want to go into discussion. Just we give you the headings, actually. Headings and a little explanation, very brief and quickly. And then another discussion that they have about Sunnah is what should we do if we have conflicting hadith. Sometimes we have conflicting hadith. For example, what should we do in the time of ghaibah for Zuhr, for the noon of Friday? Should we do Salatul Jum'ah or we should do Salatul Zuhr? Here there can be different hadiths. Or for example, in the third and fourth rak'ah of Salat, should we say 1 times tasbihat arba'a or 3 times? Is 1 enough or 3 times must be said? So there are things that sometimes the rulings can be understood differently depending on which type of which set of hadith you choose. And the reason for this conflict among the hadith is not that because some of them are weak. If some of them is weak, we leave it aside. In Usul al-Fiqh, in more detailed discussions, we have explained that the issue of ta'aruz is after making sure that both sides are valid. When both sides are valid, still we wonder what should we do. Maybe one was set in the condition of taqiyya, another was set in the normal condition. There are lots of things. So one discussion in Usul al-Fiqh is about treatment of conflicting hadith. If these hadiths are equally valuable, we say ta'adul. You can choose whatever you like. But if one side has a preference, that set would be preferred. This is called tarajih. Means when there are things that can give tarjih, preference. And we have hadith that actually tell us what to do for preference. These are called akhbar ilajiyah. These are hadiths that help us to decide what type of or what set of hadiths to choose when they conflict. So you appreciate that our fuqaha have great job and great task to do lots of scholarly work. It's not easy that every person opens a book and says, okay, I understand Arabic, I give fatwa. It's very complicated. So one issue about Sunnah is ta'adul and taraji. What should we do when hadiths which are verifiable, they conflict with each other? Okay, I think I stop here. Lesson 5, inshallah we'll leave it for lecture 5. So alhamdulillah, we managed to finish lesson 4 of the book by Ayatollah Mutahhari, and you have some idea about how to organize discussions in Usul al-Fiqh into 2 compartments. And in the first compartment, we said we talk about those things that relate to the Quran and Sunnah and Ijma' and Aql in order to understand hukm waqi'i. And we mentioned some of the things that are common between Quran and Sunnah and something which is only for the Quran. Inshallah, we continue this discussion next week, bi'iznillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you very much, Ahsantum. So we will have a few questions which we pose. In fact, we'll start off with a question from last week.
Yes.
I can see that some questions are similar from this week and the others, so that will be a good thing. But one question from last week first. There is a question which is not on the page, but I will read it out, inshallah.
Yes.
Is the effect of taqwa nafs mutma'inna, and this surah number 2, that means Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 2, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ.
Is this about Usul or about a starting plan for life?
this, I think it is for maybe it is, no, basically it's regarding if we are not muttaqi. Maybe it is for Islamic plan of life.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can keep that for later. What do you think, Sheikh?
Yes, I think. If any question about Usul al-Fiqh.
Okay, very nice. So we have one question, which is seems to be a question which comes from multiple societies, sometimes from the Indian subcontinent, sometimes from Europe, and it is regarding the title of Hujjat al-Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Should those religious scholars, so I'll put this up,
Mm-hmm.
that as I understand, Hujjatullah is something by which we can understand the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that if we can count on the day of judgment as to why we did certain things and certain why, then there is the main question is this, and it's the following. In communities, it is very common to refer in announcement to religious speakers as Hujjatul Islam, even if they come back from Qum after few years of studies. Here it says 3 to 4 years, but after few years.
Yeah.
Would you be able to explain this, Sheikhna Asantu?
Yes. Hujjat of Allah, of course, we keep it only for the Quran and Ma'sumin, Hujjah of Allah. But then we have a title, Hujjatul Islam, not Hujjatullah, Hujjatul Islam. Of course, Hujjatul Islam, also if we want to take it literally, it's not like Hujjatullah, but it still means someone is so knowledgeable and so good that can be a Hujjah for the truth of Islam. So this is a title that if you want to take it literally, it's very difficult to give to anyone. It's very difficult. Only some scholars can get this. For example, in the Sunni world, Ghazali was given this title of Hujjatul Islam Ghazali. But it's a title, and as a title, we have to understand what does it mean. In the Shia seminaries, there is such a tradition, especially in the mother houses, that when someone starts in Hose, the first few years, they call them Thiqatul Islam. Thiqatul Islam, again, if you want to take it literally, is a big title. You know, Sheikh Kulayni used to be called Thiqatul Islam, Thiqatul Islam Kulayni. But now, a junior talabe, it's called Thiqatul Islam. After that, when they reach Sutuh, they are called Hujjatul Islam. When they reach end of Sutuh and beginning of Dars Kharij, they call them Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin. And if they become Mujtahid, they call them Ayatullah. And if they become Marja, they call them Ayatullah al-Uzma. But again, standards are different. For example, Maraj, if they say Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin, normally they say to someone who is Mujtahid. They don't say to easily to people or close to Ijtihad. But among people, if someone is a good scholar, even if it's not Mujtahid, they may call him Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin. So these are titles that we have to apply them according to the norms in the houses, and it's better that we don't apply it by ourselves. We see how other scholars address that person, and we follow. We cannot, as I said last week or the week before, I said, if I love someone, I cannot say, Ayatollah, because I love him. No. Even if that person to me looks very knowledgeable, I cannot say Ayatollah. It's not to individuals to make this decision. It's the society of ulama that should make this decision.
Very good. Ahsantum. Very, very nice.
Yeah.
Like to have a question about specifically we have this question. It's an interesting question. Do you agree with the saying the Quran without Imam Ali alayhi salam is Ibn Muljam? In other words, would it be possible for a man to only refer to the Holy Quran without any reference to any hadith?
This is something that we have discussed in the series about the Quran. Allama Tabatabai Rahmatullah Alayh has a very good discussion about this in the introduction to Al-Mizan. His method of tafsir that many of our scholars accept, and we believe that actually this was also the same method that Tabarsi Rahmatullah Alayh in Majma'ul Bayan, or Sheikh Tus in Tibyan also had followed, but Allama Tabatabai developed it very nicely, is Tafsirul Quran bil Quran. Quran is a book of guidance. Tibyanan likulli shay, explains everything. Quran is Kitabun Mubin, is a clear book. Quran is Nurun Mubin. Ja'akum min Allah Kitabun wa Nurun Mubin. So if Quran is light and Kitabun Mubin and Nurun Mubin and Tibyanan likulli shay, so how can then the Quran not be understandable by itself? Quran is understandable by itself, but we cannot disregard the teachers of the Quran. There is a very fine line here. Sometimes, like akhbaris, we say that we don't understand anything and we only listen to the hadith. If there is no hadith, we keep silent. The other way is that we, inspired by the teachings of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, can reach the point that we can understand the Quran. And of course, we always check our understanding so that it would not conflict with in the hadith, or we would not be depriving ourselves from any evidence in hadith, but we can understand the Quran by the Quran. This is the difference between us and two sides of the spectrum. People who say, like Akhbariyin, that everything should be coming from Ahlul Bayt, and people who say Hasbuna Kitabullah, we don't need anything other than Quran. We are in a middle position.
Yeah. Yes. Let's go into this question. There is a and I'll expand this question a bit. We see that Brother Firdaus has asked a common person if he makes an interpretation about the meaning of the ayah of Quran, which is just to get some lessons from the ayah, and then he has the next comment which we cannot see here. Is it wrong? And I'll expand, Sheikhna, if you allow me. Is it okay for any person to do the tafsir of the Holy Quran and share it with others? It is a nearby question. This as well. If you share your view on it.
Yeah. Tafsir of Quran means that you want to go into deeper layers of the meaning. And this is not what every person can do. This needs training, this needs knowledge. And even mufassirin who are really qualified, they would never offer their tafsir without reading previous books of tafsir. You think Allama Tabatabai, for example, was just opening Quran and book of Lugha, dictionaries, and then doing tafsir? No. He was reading all the major tafasir, at least of his time, and up to his time. Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli, he doesn't just read Al-Mizan, for example, and then no. So any mufassir, any qualified scholar would certainly, in addition to having the training experience, would also check what other mufassirin have said. So if someone mentions something about Quran as his tafsir without having credential and without saying what other scholars have said, this is problematic. We have to be careful. Sometimes it's just a matter of reflections. Few of us read the Quran, reflect on the Quran, try to get some lessons from the Quran which don't need any interpretation. It's very clear and easy. This is actually where the Quran is reminder. As a reminder, there's no problem. But if you want to understand something new, then you have to have some proof. You cannot say this is what the Quran says. But if it's a reminder, it means something that I know, but I have forgotten. I need someone to refresh me, not someone to teach me something new. So, teacher of the Quran, mufassir of Quran, is different from reading together and sharing with each other, the clear lessons that can be helpful as a reminder.
Thank you very much, Sheikh.
You're welcome.
I have, and also thank you everyone for your asked questions. We appreciate them very much. Before we go on a break, I'd like to just share that if anyone needs the book, The Islamic Plan of Life for Life, then please do order it online on Hujjat Academy, Hujjat.academy.